So fellas, obviously we've just had UFC 310, and I feel like a good way to kind of gauge how good this card is to rank every fight that took place on this card, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're doing a tier list, ranking every fight from UFC 310 from S tier, meaning it was an insane fight, or the finish was insane, or whatever the performance was, it was an S tier performance, and then D tier being, it was a shit fight, you know, forgettable, absolutely nothing good to come from this fight. And we'll go in there with the first fight, Kennedy Asuku versus Luque Brzeski. I'll put this in B tier. I think Kennedy got a performance bonus as well, which, I mean, I guess you can give him a performance bonus, but I feel like there was so many other fighters on the card that could have got a bonus over him, like Choi. But no, good performance from Kennedy. Knocks out Luque Brzeski. It was to be expected, though. Like, everyone expected him to go out there and do it to Luque Brzeski. The dude's been finished by so many guys in the UFC. I think he's only won one fight in the UFC to Valter Walker, so it was always going to be a Kennedy Asuku knockout, but it was a good performance, I guess. Not really much to talk about. Not really much went on in the first round. Kennedy Asuku landed the shot, knocked out Luque Brzeski in the first round, and got the win. Not really much to talk about. B tier because of the knockout win. Then we had Chase Hooper versus Guida. I'm going to have to put this one in B tier too. Again, I think he got a performance bonus too. It was a good performance by Chase Hooper. He looked really good in this fight. And he looks like he's got a lot of potential in the lightweight division. Again, very similar situation to the Luque Brzeski fight, though. We all knew it was going to happen. No one picked Guida to beat Chase Hooper, and if you did, you need to stop predicting ASAP, because there's never a world where Guida was going to win this fight. But no, Chase Hooper looked good. It was a good performance from Chase Hooper. Looked really interesting with the grappling, and was taking down Guida. Even on the feet, he was looking sharp, and then eventually took him down, got the armbar, and submitting Guida. So I'll put this one in B tier. Good performance from Chase Hooper. I've already done a matchmaking and a breakdown, but I do want to see him progress in the lightweight division, because I think he could be a grappling problem, because this isn't the first time we've seen dominant grappling from Chase Hooper. We saw it in his last fight against Borshev, where I absolutely dominated him. He's done the same thing to Guida, got a submission. I'll put it in B tier. Then we had Kessa versus Eric Anders. For the fight itself, I mean, I'll put it in C tier, to be fair. It was not a good fight. I mean, Max Griffin threw about 5 significant strikes per round. There was absolutely no output from Max Griffin. It was a bit of a boring fight up until the finish. It was just Kessa. Kessa didn't look too bad with a stand-up hit, but it was mainly just to set up the takedowns. He'd kind of, every now and then, go in with a shot, immediately shoot a takedown. Max Griffin would defend a couple of times he'd get taken down. Wasn't really much going on in the first 2 rounds. Nothing significant landed on the feet. Every now and then, Kessa would run in with a little bit of a combination, but he wouldn't really land anything because he's a bit of a sloppy striker. 3rd round, got the submission. I'm going to put it in C tier, though. It wasn't a great fight. Max Griffin threw nothing, had decent enough defense to not get finished early. There was nothing really going on with the stand-up. I mean, you've got two kind of... I mean, Max Griffin's definitely the better striker, but he just wasn't really throwing anything. Kessa was doing the better in this fight, so I'll put that fight in C tier. Not really much to talk about. Then we had Joshua Van versus Duran. This is going straight in S tier. This was one of the best fights to watch on the card. I said this in the breakdown. Joshua Van's got to be one of the best flyweights to watch on the roster right now. He's so fun to watch with his boxing, and he has been for a while. I know he got knocked out early this year against Charles Johnson, but he's picked up 2 wins now. He's just such a good boxer. He kind of reminds me of PT Yan on the feet, where he just walks forward and rips to the body. He absolutely battered Duran. That first round, Duran did all right. He was landing some nice shots. Van was landing some good leg kicks. He got taken down. But then for the 2nd and the 3rd round, it was just a Joshua Van masterclass. Absolutely battered Duran. If Duran didn't have such a good chin, he would have been finished in the 2nd round, because he was taking some massive shots, basically just getting the crap beaten out of him. Solid performance from Joshua Van. He's one of my favourite flyweights right now, and I hope he succeeds in this division. I match made him against Steve Erceg. I think that will be an absolutely amazing fight for, like, the UFC Perth, or just maybe that's too quick of a turnaround, but just sometime next year, Joshua Van versus Steve Erceg. I think it would be a sick fight. But yeah, and credit to Duran as well for being tough. You know, his chin's insane. He was still fighting back. He was still landing in that 3rd round as well. After taking a beating in the 2nd, he came back in the 3rd and was, you know, trying to land a couple of shots. But it was a Joshua Van masterclass. Absolutely battered Duran, and in my opinion, one of the best fights on the card. Super fun to see. If he would have got the finish, you know, it could have been even better, but I'll still put it in S tier regardless, just because of how good he looked. What was the next fight? Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. Yeah, this is going to have to go in C tier too. It's just... I'm not going to say it's sad watching Chris Weidman lose in 2024, because he did just come off a bit of an eye-poke victory, but... I mean, there's just some fighters that don't need to fight anymore. I don't like it when fighters who are way past their prime and they're old, they just kind of drag on their career. I don't like it when fighters do that, and Chris Weidman's done that. He didn't have to come back after he got that leg injury. It was a bit of a terrible fight. To be fair to Chris Weidman, in the first round, he did drop Eric Anders. If you're getting dropped by Chris Weidman in 2024, you know you've got serious problems. Dropped him in the first round, and then I thought he was going to get a finish in the first. He took him down. Well, he didn't take him down. He dropped him, and then got on top position and just did absolutely nothing with the position that he had. Did nothing on top position to Eric Anders. And it was just a bit of a dull first round. And then the second round comes along. Eric Anders, I think he took Chris Weidman down. I forgot how. I don't know if he dropped him or took him down. I can't remember. But I think he took him down. And then just started battering him with ground and pound. And Chris Weidman looked like he didn't really want to be there. For the grappler that Chris Weidman gets hyped up to be, his grappling looked atrocious. Kind of just took a beating for about 2 minutes. Very slow paced by Eric Anders because he's such a slow middleweight. He's one of the slowest dudes on the roster. But yeah, not really much to take away. Didn't really want to see Chris Weidman lose in 2024 by finish, but he did. I mean, they should both probably retire, especially Weidman. Then we had Grimbo, Randy Brown versus Brian Battle. This is probably going to go in C tier 2. This is probably going to go C tier 2. It wasn't that good of a fight. I was expecting this to be a banger. You've got Randy Brown, who's this very slick striker, you know, knocked out the likes of Muslim Salikov, outstruck Zaleski dos Santos, only really been beaten by JDM. And you've got Brian Battle, this walk-forward pressure striker who just absolutely butchered the prospect of Kevin Gisette. I thought this was going to be a really fun stand-up fight, and it wasn't that bad in the first round. Randy Brown was landing some amazing leg kicks. He was way quicker than Brian Battle. Brian Battle couldn't really do anything. And then in the second and the third round, I don't blame Brian Battle for doing this, but it kind of just lost the momentum. It was basically just Brian Battle latching up control time, holding him against the cage. For basically the entirety of the second and the third round. If anything, Randy Brown was still the better grappler, though, because he was able to secure the takedowns. And apart from that, there just wasn't really much going on. It wasn't a back-and-forth war on the feet. There wasn't really anything significant that landed on the feet, to be fair. Apart from occasionally in the clinch, Brian Battle would land an elbow, and then immediately separate. Randy Brown would land a leg kick, and then they'd go back into the clinch. So there wasn't really any major talking points. On top of that, you had Brian Battle missing weight by 4 pounds, so the crowd were against him. So it wasn't even like it was, you know, a hype. You know, everyone was hyped to see Brian Battle win, but they're all booing him. And I do think he plays good as a villain, but the performance itself, I'm putting it in C tier. Wasn't an overly interesting fight. It wasn't terrible, but you know, it wasn't overly interesting. Then we had a fight that should have been much higher on the card. Aljamain Sterling versus Evloev. You know what? To say that you've got two guys that are called the most boring fighters in the UFC, it wasn't that bad. I'm going to put it in B tier. This wasn't that bad of a fight, to be fair. That was actually quite interesting to watch. There were sometimes you look at grapplers and they're kind of boring grapplers. Aljamain Sterling, when he was in his bantamweight career, was quite a boring grappler where he kind of just holds on to people, doesn't really do much with the position. But this fight, because they're so evenly matched with the grappling, there was constant reversals. They were constantly both having moments with the grappling. Evloev was taking Sterling down and landing ground and pound. Sterling was picking up Evloev and slamming him. So it was actually quite a fun fight to see. And even on the feet, because they're both quite, I don't want to say they're both terrible strikers. Evloev's quite good, but they both had moments on the feet. Evloev landed a nice, or attempted to land a nice spinning back fist. Sterling wasn't doing too bad on the feet either. It was a fairly close, evenly matched fight, and the decision showed that as well. Good performance from Evloev. I'm not going to say it was a banger. I'm not going to say I thoroughly enjoyed it, but you know, sometimes when you put two high-level grapplers against each other, you just want to see a grappling match. We thought we were going to see that between Bo Nickel and Paul Craig, but we didn't. But this fight, high-level grappling match, wasn't necessarily boring, wasn't overly amazing. I'll put it in B tier though, and like I said, for Evloev and Sterling standards, this was a good fight. Then we had Vicente Luque go out and finish Grimbo real quickly. Yeah, this is going straight. You couldn't have written a better performance for Vicente Luque. This was like the picture-perfect performance for Vicente Luque. To go there against Grimbo, drop him in like 30 seconds, get your signature dash choke and choke him out unconscious within like 40 seconds of the fight, 45 seconds. You couldn't have asked for a better performance for Vicente Luque, and I'm glad that Vicente Luque was the guy to do it as well. He was a guy that you kind of wanted to root for in the welterweight division. He was a likable guy who was going out there and just battering people. Hits the fight with Bilal Muhammad, loses a decision, then it's just constant losses, gets battered by Jeff Neal, picks up a win over RDA just to get finished by Buckley. So he kind of just hit this roadblock, but now he fought Grimbo, got the win brutally as well, putting him unconscious and dropping him in the same like 20 seconds as well. But yeah, you couldn't have written a better performance for Vicente Luque. Great comeback, great win, and I'm glad to see them back in the winning column. Then we had Anthony Smith versus Dominic Reyes. I'm going to put this in A tier just because of Dominic Reyes being back in the winning column. If we're talking in terms of Anthony Smith, it was a terrible performance, but I'm just glad to see that Dominic Reyes is not only back in the winning column, but on a winning streak, both by finish in 2024. It's been a great year for Dominic Reyes, finishing Jacoby and Smith. But yeah, Smith was a punching bag. Walks in the octagon crying, all emotional, whereas Dominic Reyes looks like a full, you know, just a full killer. And that was kind of shown in the fight. Dominic Reyes was landing the better shots. Smith was almost inviting Reyes to hit him in the face because Reyes was like landing a bunch of jabs. Smith wasn't even trying to defend him. He was just walking forward, eating the jabs. And then, yeah, just Reyes just pieced him up on the feet. Eventually in the third round, I think it was, or the second whenever he finished him. I'm pretty sure it was the third, though. Landed a nice shot, dropped Anthony Smith, went for the finish. It was again, a really slow-paced finish. It would land a bunch of elbows. I think Smith shot a takedown and Reyes defended with elbows, though. And just kept attacking him with ground and pound and elbows until eventually the fight got stopped. But yeah, I'm just glad to see Dominic Reyes back in the winning column. I thought we may never see him win a fight again in the UFC after he started taking knockout loss after knockout loss, but he's back. Hopefully this is the last fight for Anthony Smith because he looks progressively worse every fight, but I'm just glad to see Reyes back in the winning column. Another finish as well for Reyes. It looked quite kind of good out there. So I'll put Reyes in A tier. Then we had, which fight was this? Oh, this was Choi versus Nate Landwehr. Yeah, this is going to go in A tier. I think we all expected this fight going into it to be like a bit of a stupid brawl, a bit of a back and forth fight, a Michael Chandler Gaethje of the featherweight division where they both just throw in and trade in. But it wasn't that, but I'm not complaining either because Choi looked super dominant. He was levels above Nate Landwehr in this fight. He was way harder hitting on the feet. He was way more technical on the feet. His grappling was better. He was taking him down whenever he wanted to. There was absolutely no keys to victory or route to victory for Nate Landwehr in this fight. It was a very dominant performance from Choi. First round, just beats him up on the feet, lands the better shots, lands the way more powerful shots. So to the point where Nate Landwehr, who usually brawls, didn't even want to brawl in this fight. And I think it was the second round or whenever he finished him where he just took him down, and then every single time Nate would get back up and just take him straight back down again and got him in crucifix position and eventually got the finish. Some people were calling early stoppage. I don't think it was an early stoppage because the fight would have got stopped if there'd have been an extra 20 seconds regardless. So solid win from Choi, and I'm kind of excited to see what he does in the future now with the featherweight division. I match made him against Sadiq Youssef. I think that would be a banger. I'd love to see him fight somebody in the rankings soon as well. But yeah, dominant performance from Choi. Went out there and did exactly what he needed to do, and just completely beat Nate Landwehr up pillar to post. Nate Landwehr couldn't really get going. You know what? For a brawly fighter, he did not want to engage in a brawl with Choi because it probably would have resulted in him getting knocked out. So solid performance from Choi. I'm putting it in A tier because of it. Then we had Bryce Mitchell versus Gracie. This would have been a D tier. However, Bryce Mitchell did manage to get the KO win, so I've got to move it up to C tier. This was the worst fight on the card up until the third round. It was essentially just Gracie doing Gracie things, pulling guard on Bryce Mitchell having the control time, doing the better with the ground and pound. I mean, that was basically all that happened in the first round. Second round, there was a bit of a submission threat by armbar from Gracie. Doesn't get the submission, and it's just the same thing basically in the second round. Bryce Mitchell with the control time, Gracie on bottom position. And then the third round starts. It seems like it was going that way until eventually Bryce Mitchell slams him on his neck, similar to what Jordan Levitt did before when he got that KO. And then follows up with a massive elbow and KOs Gracie. Good win for Bryce Mitchell because he managed to put Gracie out cold, because he managed to get a finish, and the fact that he's back in the winning column by way of finish. I'll move it up to C tier. That was a finish. It was pretty brutal. Put out Gracie out cold, so you've got to respect it. But the fight itself, it was the most boring fight on the card. Like I said before, you can have entertaining grappling matches between guys like Evloev and Sterling, and then there's grappling matches between the likes of Gracie and Bryce Mitchell, which you just don't want to watch. There's nothing to watch, so I'll put it in C tier. He got a finish. It was brutal, but the fight was boring. Then we had Gane and Volkov. Now, the fight itself, I probably would have put in B tier, but because of that massive robbery from Ciryl Gane, that's the only thing that comes to my head. I mean, I'm so pissed as well, bro. I had an underdog pick. I think I'm one of the worst predictors. Well, not one of the worst predictors, but my prediction record for this week is kind of bad as well. And if I'd have got the pick with, if you know, the judges would have gave it to Volkov, not only would I got a massive underdog, but you know, that's another correct prediction too. I'm kind of pissed. I got bias over Volkov. But no, seriously though, it was a bit of a boring... I mean, it wasn't a boring fight. It definitely wasn't a boring fight, but there wasn't much going on. The first round, they were kind of just trading on the feet until eventually Volkov tried taking it to the mat. They were both having the moments on the ground. Gane looked like he'd improved his grappling a lot. Second round, it was mainly a stand-up fight. Very technical. Gane seemed to be landing doing the better with the boxing, but Volkov had come back with a couple of leg kicks and then eventually landed some massive spinning back fist and nearly wobbled Ciryl Gane. And then the third round, it was basically just Ciryl Gane looking for a Kimura. Alexander Volkov with the control time won dominantly the third round. It was 2-1 for Alexander Volkov, and then the judges gave it to Ciryl Gane, which it's just pissing me off, man. How Ciryl Gane is one of... I'm not going to go out on another rant because I've done it in 2 videos already, but how Ciryl Gane is one of the most gifted fighters in the UFC. That, in my opinion, was an easy win to Alexander Volkov. It wasn't hard to score, but it is what it is. Ciryl Gane got the win. Wasn't an overly entertaining fight. Was not a good performance from Ciryl Gane. He did improve his grappling since the John Jones and Ngannou fight, but you've got to remember he's facing Volkov. It's not like he showed good grappling against somebody like Aspinall or Almeida. So, bad win for Volkov. Bad win for Gane. Volkov should have won the fight. And yeah, that's all you can really say. I'm still a bit pissed about the robbery. I hope Volkov gets a good fight next. I hope they treat him well in like a #1 contender fight. And Gane, put him against Blades, put him against a bad matchup stylistically. And let's see how we can do. And then we had the co-main event, Shavkat versus Garry. Shavkat versus Garry, I'll put this fight in B tier. It was a very technical fight, probably the highest level fight we had in the card so far. You've got undefeated versus undefeated. Shavkat gets his first decision win. There wasn't much going on in this fight. It started to turn up a little bit in the later rounds, but the first couple of rounds was kind of just Shavkat holding Ian Garry against the cage, looking for the takedown. He's not really a double leg, single leg kind of guy. He's Shavkat. He kind of likes getting people in the clinch and tripping them. He did it with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He tried doing it with Jeff Neal, but he managed to get the submission in the clinch. But he couldn't do it to Ian Garry. Garry's takedown defense was on point. He looked like a real problem as well, did Ian Garry. I think he's still a top contender in the division. If anything, his stock rose in this fight. And for Shavkat, when it comes to the stand-up, Shavkat wasn't looking bad on the feet. He was looking good with his kicks. He even landed and clocked Ian Garry in the first round. Wasn't really anything significant on the feet between the two of them, though. And then when it came to the grappling, there was a big moment in the fourth round, I think it was, where Ian Garry took the back of Shavkat, nearly submitted Shavkat, which would have been absolutely insane. That would have been scenes if Ian Garry was able to pull off a submission over Shavkat of all people. But then eventually Shavkat got the decision win. Not an overly insane fight. Wasn't anything significant. Wasn't anything really significant apart from the submission attempt from Garry to come from this fight. Shavkat picks up a win. I do think that Belal Muhammad beat Shavkat based on that performance, and if anything, it was a bit of a stock drop for Shavkat and a stock rise for Ian Garry, but it was on short notice. You've got to respect Shavkat for taking the fight on short notice when he was going to get a title shot anyway. But for the fight itself, I'll put it in B tier. And then for the main event, Pantoja versus Asakura, yeah, I'm going to put it in S tier. Represented the UFC, went out there against Kai Asakura, and dominated him. He was landing the better shots on the feet, despite the fact that Kai Asakura is meant to be this insane striker who looked like a bantamweight in the octagon. Was landing the better shots on the feet, took him down, dropped him in the first round as well against the cage, didn't get the finish done. And then in the second round, takes him down effortlessly, just gets his back, gets the rear naked choke and puts him out unconscious. And Pantoja proving again that he's the best flyweight of the modern era. He is the greatest flyweight of the modern era. And I'd say right now, to be fair, he's the second greatest flyweight of all time above Figueiredo. I know Figueiredo's done really good in this division, but apart from Demetrius Johnson, he's the greatest flyweight of all time. He actually called out Demetrius Johnson in the Octagon interview. I don't think that fight's going to actually materialize, but despite whatever, Pantoja shut down Kai Asakura, showed that UFC is levels above these different promotions, beat a bantamweight champion from a different promotion as well. Solid performance from Pantoja, got it done in 2, and there's nothing really bad you can say about the performance, but that is how I would personally tier list rank every single performance after UFC 310. Let me know your thoughts on this tier list if you agree, disagree, if you'd switch any placements around. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.